The majority of high-performance code written on planet Earth, including libraries and APIs, has been written in C. You could also argue that maybe C++ as well, but either C or C++. However, I think it's very obvious that C is not perfect, and it has a lot of issues. And one of the biggest things missing from C, perhaps the biggest, at least in my opinion, is the complete absence of dynamic growable data types and data structures. Specifically, there's no dynamic arrays and there's no hash maps. So if you use C, you usually have to just implement this yourself. And that's kind of sad for a language that's existed for like 4 or 5 decades. C also is very manual when it comes to memory management. And I mean, it's obvious because it's a manual memory management language. But what I really mean by that is there are no abstractions for managing memory. There's no built-in arenas or destructors like in C++. Obviously, there's no ownership model like in Rust. There's nothing like that. It is simply pretty much, for the most part, malloc and free, and that's all you get. Another thing that I find really annoying about C is its module system. Now, I don't want to get too deep into how C and .h files work, but essentially the way it works is declarations go in .h files, and then implementations go in C files, or the definitions. And then a linker will satisfy all the symbols. On top of this, then you have make files, which will do all of the linking and figure out which object files need to be recompiled. It's a whole mess. And this actually incentivizes really complex build systems and compilation processes for absolutely no reason. Lastly, I think that strings in C are just a lot more annoying to deal with than they have to be, simply made true by the fact that they're just null terminated byte arrays. Now, these are not all the problems with C. I'm sure there are way more problems that I just don't even know about. But these are the main things that have pissed me off about C when I use C. Now, unfortunately, what I said at the beginning of this video was all true. C is foundational. I don't even think a world really exists without C, as things currently are. Replacing it is practically impossible, and not only that, but most operating systems have C runtimes built into them. Now, any reasonable replacement for C would have to be as portable as C, as performant as C, have all of the same low-level features and controls as C, while also trying to add some more modern features to balance out some of the crap in C. And honestly, this is probably impossible, but it hasn't stopped anybody from trying. Probably one of the first to ever do it was Stroustrup's language, C++. Ever heard of it? And some of the nicest things that come from C++ are probably the standard template library containers. Honestly, the two most important containers in the entire library are vector and unordered map. Just a dynamic array and a hash map. And those two things automatically make C++ easier to work with than C, in my opinion. You also have something called bounds checking. Yeah, that doesn't exist in C either. The nice thing about C++ is that it keeps a lot of the stuff from C. The thing that sucks about C++ is that it keeps a lot of the stuff from C. C++ also kind of got lost in the sauce, and what I mean by that is they pretty much completely destroyed all of the simplicity from C, and they made a really, really complicated language. That's all I'm going to say. Then there was Rust. It's a language that really explores a lot of cool things that could exist in languages that probably don't need to exist, but it's really cool that someone explored the idea. Rust's ownership system is really cool, and it is one way of trying to achieve memory safety without sacrificing performance. That being said, Rust is not memory safe, and I know it sucks to hear that. Unfortunately, systems programming also requires unsafe code, so even within the Rust ownership system, a lot of times you'll have to use the unsafe keyword, and then at that point, like, why not just use C or something else? Like, it just seems silly. Another language that was actually used to try to replace C++, which is kind of funny because it kind of more resembles C in my opinion, is Go. And Go is probably one of my favorite languages of all time. Go is really simple, it's really easy to learn, there's no complexity to Go, and Go has a really nice module system. But to be honest, you don't even need modules because if you use a file that's within the same module, it will just be included in that module. It's genius. Why didn't people think of this before? It also has standard data structures like maps and I guess slices, which are essentially dynamic arrays in a lot of ways, built into the language. So you don't need to include anything, you don't need to use the standard library, it's just built into the language. Now, the issue with Go is obviously that it has a garbage collector, and that's unfortunately a big no-no in systems programming. Now, the thing that I had been dreaming of for a really long time, and something that I was actually going to just implement myself at one point, was essentially Go without a garbage collector. So a lot of the stuff that I love from Go, but without a garbage collector, so you could do systems programming in a way that makes sense. And I never got my chance because somebody did it first. My new favorite programming language is the Odin programming language. And there are so many different things that I love about this language. It is not just Go without a garbage collector. And actually, Odin was actually more inspired by Pascal and C. And to be honest, Go is actually just inspired by Pascal and C. So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. But the point is, Odin and Go are very similar, and I love the design of both of the languages. Ginger Bill, the one who made Odin, has admitted to being inspired by Rob Pike, who was the designer of Go. So I can really see a lot of the similarities. So before I end this video, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the main features that I think are really cool about Odin. I can't really go over everything because that would make this a lot longer than it has to be, but declarations are really cool. They're very similar to Go, but I think even better than Go. Pointers are actually more explicit, I think, a better syntax than both C and Go because the asterisk kind of gets used a lot. And not only that, but also instead of placing the asterisk before the pointer at all times for definition or dereferencing, the definition and dereferencing are actually different. So there is actually some difference in the syntax, and I do believe it's more explicit. There's procedure overloading, there's tagged unions, there's arenas that are built into the standard library. The standard library itself is very, very big and useful and helpful. There's the vendor libraries, which are just C bindings to a lot of useful libraries like Raylib and OpenGL. There's subtype polymorphism. There's array programming, built-in matrices with also matrices arithmetic. I mean, it's crazy. But the main idea of this whole video was that I think Odin has actually made me enjoy programming again. Like, it truly is an alternative to C for the joy of programming. So if you have time, I think you should go check it out.